I think that'll take a minute to get going.
Okay, and we are live on YouTube, on my page, so you can check that out as an alternative. While we're going to take one more minute before we start, please make sure that your phone is muted. If you unmute yourself, just so we don't have a lot of background noise, but if you stay muted when you're not talking, that would be great. And you can tweet with a hashtag. I'm going to put it in the chat, D17Dems. Right. Hey, Piper, now we get your face.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
Hi, everyone.
Hold on, I heard a voice. I'm looking for the face that went with it. It sounded like David Trone's voice.
Yeah, I'm here, Senator Kagan. But I'm
Awesome.
driving, so I'm not on a Zoom. I'm audio.
Perfect. Well, it's great to have you here, Congressman. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So it's 7:01, and I have learned from my work on 911 that it's all about starting on time and respecting people's calendars and busy schedules. So Delegates Polakovich, Carr, Gilchrist, Barve, we good to start? All right. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking time on a Sunday evening in the middle of probably one of the craziest times in American history. This past week has been especially challenging. It's not bad enough that we have a crazy man in the White House, that we have a pandemic with thousands of people dying every day. But then the key symbol of our nation's capital was assaulted by thugs on Wednesday. And as hard as it was to watch all of that on Wednesday, I don't know about you, but some of what has been uncovered in the days since then has really been terrifying. So, so we are focused on Annapolis. The Senate and House will reconvene this Wednesday at noon, and we are going to be very busy with a lot of priorities. So again, thank you all for joining us. I put in the chat, the hashtag for the evening is hashtag D17Dems. So feel free to tweet or post with that. And we have a bunch of elected officials joining us. We will have more that will come and join us in and out. But since Congressman Trone is here, do you want to go now and help us kick off, Congressman? Or do you want to wait a bit until you can we can have your face as well? I don't know how long you're driving.
Yeah, no, I got a bit of a drive, but no, I'd be happy to go now. And I think it's appropriate, Senator Kagan, based on what you talked about, you know, what's happened to federal in Washington last week. There's never been anything like this ever, and God bless us, there never will be anything. So, well, thanks for having us on here, and the same for Julie, Jim, Kumar, thank you. But I was on the floor of the Capitol with the House of Representatives when it all went down, and it was pretty literally surreal to be instructed to put on gas masks and get low in your seat and begin an evacuation. But there's no question from here, you know, we've got to move expeditiously to impeach this president. I've signed on, as I'm sure all the Maryland delegation has signed on. We have a caucus call tomorrow at 2:00. I'm in the camp that we should look for a vote, and I think that'll happen Wednesday or Thursday for impeachment. I wish I could say that it'd be bipartisan, but these Republicans are just allowing anything unbelievable to happen, and they don't seem to understand that, you know, principles ought to be above their so-called careers, but they they will not stand up. So we might get a couple, but not many. And then my position after that is that we need to sit tight. And that's what I've been advocating, and some others feel the same way. And I think we need to sit tight and not pass it on to the Senate for 3, maybe 4 months, and let President Biden, get his appointees through so we get government up and running. We got to pass a big COVID bill, an economic bill, and maybe it's 2-3 trillion, and help the American people. We got to get the vaccine problem rolled out. Maryland's given out 27% of our vaccines across the country. It's a similar number. That's outrageous. Dropping the holdback, which Biden said today, makes all the sense in the world. They're manufacturing these millions every week. So we need to really figure out how to roll this thing out quick as we can. And the last thing is, I think we're going to get so much more information about this evil man, the worst president ever in our country, in the next 90, 120 days, once he doesn't have the bully pulpit. And with that information, we can build a better case, and then we can impeach him and be successful in the Senate, where we need 67 votes. And that will bar him from running for public office again. And most importantly, I want his whole goddamn family out. Don Jr., Ivanka, Eric, Jared, they all got to go. I mean, I'm sure you see many of the videos of their, party before the insurrection began, with all the loud music and craziness. So that whole family has to go. They're a blight on our country, and the impeachment and the guilty charge is the way we're going to get there. So it's going to be a busy next 3 to 4 months. And, I appreciate all the calls we got from folks in the district, asking if we were okay. And unfortunately, there was COVID available in the room in which we were all sent to. So now we've all got to be COVID tested in the morning, as one of the members was positive and seems to have spread it throughout the room. So kind of one thing after another. But the best thing is, countdown for him, Senator Kagan. It's pretty damn soon.
Yeah.
So thank you, unless you have a quick question.
I think before we see if there are any questions for Congressman Trone, I just want to say how wonderful it has been to work with you, to collaborate with you, you and your staff. Sonny and Andrew and everybody on your team have just been super responsive, collaborative, and you have been reaching out to us and working with us. And I really appreciate that. The residents of Gaithersburg, which is the northern part of our district, which is in the 6th district, are very lucky to have you representing them in Congress.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I think that we put customer service, which I understand, at the top of the list. We've really worked hard to reach out. Sonny and the team have done an awesome job. And this next Congress, with the appointment to the Appropriations Committee, that's going to really give us a lot more juice, a lot more clout to move forward on addiction and mental health and, criminal justice and medical research issues I know are very important to you and those on this call.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations to you on that. Obviously, Speaker Pelosi has a great deal of respect for you to give you a slot on the Appropriations Committee. So that's huge. Is there a quick question in the room for Congressman Trone before we move on and let him go and drive safely and hands-free?
Cheryl, I think there was one question in the chat from George Carlisle, who said, David, you've been doing great in the last year. Thanks. But he asked, why do impeachment at this point? Trump's leaving soon.
I mean, the real key is we've got to send a message for what's right. And what's right is he has to be held and others accountable. And the second piece is really that key is we have to bar him from ever running again for the presidency. And which if he is impeached, even after he's out of office, he'll be barred. And I think that'll serve as an effective bar about his siblings who all have been making noise about running for the Senate or different places around the country. And these are just bad people that have no compassion. They have no civility, and we can do so much better.
So Congressman, there was another question as well, just clarifying. When you said the entire Maryland delegation has co-signed this letter seeking impeachment, we assume you mean 7 of the 8.
Forget Andy Harris.
Yeah.
Yeah, forget Andy Harris. I don't count him as part of the delegation.
Well, he is, and we believe in democracy, but we have an election in 22, and let's see if we can get someone who's more thoughtful and collaborative. So, well, Congressman David Crone, thank you for all you and your staff do. Thank you for taking time out from your day in these crazy times to come and join us. We really appreciate you. We look forward to working with you in person for the years to come.
And I appreciate it. And, I work for you and your constituents, and, bring us problems, bring us things that we can fix. And that's what I just love to do. So thanks very much, and good night.
Good night. All right. Well, that was a great way to kick this off. So here's the plan for this evening. You're going to hear from each of us who represent District 17. Me, Cheryl Kagan, the senator, as well as delegates Barve, Gilchrist, and Polakovich-Carr. We'll each probably talk about 10 minutes or so, and then we will take questions. But interspersed, we are going to have some of our elected officials say a quick hello, as Congressman Crone did. This past week, in addition to the stampede on the Capitol and stuff, I just want to take a moment and just recognize the enormous loss that Congressman Jamie Raskin had on December 31st with the loss of his beautiful son, Tommy, at age 25. And so I know that you all are, thank you. Delegate Gilchrist just put a heart in his square, and I think we are all grieving with him. So I do not anticipate that he'll be joining us. And he is also, as a constitutional scholar and leader, we are very lucky to have him on the Hill, working for us and leading the way. Today is Senator Chris Van Hollen's birthday. So hopefully he is out celebrating with his family and friends, and actually maybe having a night off the grid. But Joan Kleinman, who is his magnificent representative, is on the call. And Joan, if you want to just speak for a minute, and then we will kick off the evening's event.
Sure. Actually, I hope the senator is in with his family this evening celebrating his birthday.
Fair enough.
But he did want me to thank everybody for all your expressions of concern for his safety and that of our staff this week. When people asked how we were doing, I said, like you, we are just completely freaked out, but thankfully everybody was safe. And we all feel violated by what happened. And as we watch the images on the TV this weekend and see the destruction and the videos and all, I think we're all going to suffer PTSD. It's really hard to fathom that our sacred institution was desecrated and defiled in that way. But I know we're looking forward to turning the page on this administration. And thank God, we're looking forward to welcoming 2 new Democratic senators to the Senate. So hopefully the Senate will no longer be a place where legislation goes to die. We are all looking forward to making progress, certainly passing a COVID relief bill and economic stimulus and all the things that are waiting for us to do. Thank you from Senator Van Hollen for all of your engagement on the issues that matter. And he asked that you don't hesitate to reach out to us with your ideas on what he should be doing on Capitol Hill and how our staff can be of assistance to you. And thank you, Senator Kagan, for giving me this time.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time. So let's start off our evening, and we are going to have Delegate Kumar Barve kick us off. Kumar.
Okay, thanks a lot, Cheryl. Welcome, everyone. I've not yet been fired. I'm still the chairman of the Environment and Transportation Committee. And to remind you all what that encompasses, it involves obviously the environment, It involves agricultural issues. It involves land use, natural resources. It involves transportation. We also have ethics in our purview. And so what I'd like to do is go through a couple of issues in order to whet your appetite and to cause you to perhaps be able to ask questions at the Q&A. But let me begin by saying a few things. First of all, this is going to be a session unlike any that we've ever really been involved in. It's taken a very great amount of time to plan a socially distanced legislative session. We are going to go into session on opening day, as we always do, elect the speaker pro tem. We will then be altering the rules a little bit so that we can conduct our business in a responsible, socially distanced fashion. And at least on the House side, we anticipate that we won't go back to the full House of Delegates for several weeks. The vast majority of our work will start the very next day. We will have YouTube socially distanced public hearings. Our subcommittees will meet using Zoom and YouTube as well, so that there will be complete transparency. In the course of deciding how public hearings are going to go, I've made the commitment to the members of my committee that I'm going to make sure that all points of view are heard, which is to say, if there's a Democrat versus Republican issue, I'm going to reach out to the ranking senior Republican on my committee, a guy from the Eastern Shore, and we'll make sure that the Eastern Shore or Republican point of view is responsibly and adequately covered. And we're going to, of course, we're going to have the electronic transmission of testimony, but people will be testifying using Zoom, and we will try to get through all of the subject matter as quickly as we can. I still don't have a good feel for how quickly or slowly things will go. I think it'll take me a couple of days to really get used to all of this. And it's my hope that we'll be able to conduct as much work as we ever have in the past, but we'll see. And I'm going to have to calibrate it. And I know Cheryl, as vice chair of a standing committee in the Senate side, along with her chair, are going to have to do the very same thing. And so let me go through a couple of issues, and then I will conclude, I guess, at 7:23:24-ish. And first issue is recycling and plastic waste issues. Over the course of this interim, we had 3 public hearings, public briefings on the issue of recycling, which I think you have to have been living under a rock to not realize that recycling has completely failed in the United States and in Maryland and in much of the world. And so although there will be many bills on this subject matter, it's very clear that the best way to proceed is to avoid the initial use of single-use plastics, for example, before it can even get into the waste stream. And so I look forward to the legislation that will be written to hopefully get us closer to that. I think we had a plastic bag bill that ran out of time in the Senate last year, and I'm hopeful that that will pass. We also have an interesting paint stewardship bill, which, to make it, to boil it down to what it ultimately will do, you'll pay a little extra money when you buy a can of paint. That money will go into a privately held a fund to dispose of paint waste, so it doesn't go into doesn't go into landfills, doesn't go into incinerators. It's a little bit like deputizing a independent body to really run all of this. And this is something that passed the House of Delegates. It ran out of time in the Senate, and it's hopeful that we'll be able to pass that bill successfully. Public-private partnerships, I-270 and 495. Very complex issue area. As you know, I and my committee over the course of 2 years passed 4 bills that passed over in the Senate. Cheryl was supportive of that and many other bills that were in the Senate like that. None of those bills received a vote. I, at this point, don't have a clear idea of what a better strategy is. I and my colleagues and allies in both the House and the Senate are basically going to huddle after the opening session and try to, sometimes you have to just get into town and take a temperature of things to figure out what the best way to proceed is going to be. My position, of course, is it always has been that we shouldn't expand the footprint of I-270. I've always been a supporter of reversible tolled lanes as long as the number of free lanes remains the same. And hopefully we'll be able to do that. I will say about the Purple Line, though, a deal has been made between the Department of Transportation and the Purple Line partners, and it's not ideal, but I think it's the best deal that can be had in order to allow us to continue to move forward. It does make the project substantially more expensive. That was unavoidable. Okay, monorail. As you know, I had the first public briefing in my committee on the issue of a proposed monorail that would go from north of city of Frederick down to Shady Grove Metro. And it's my belief that we have to have lots of modalities of transportation. The attraction for me with respect to the monorail is that it's a method of transportation that does not require the state to acquire new land. Probably nobody will do a protest against a relatively silent project like the monorail, which would be on highway property that we already own, but we'll have to see. There's also another project on the other side of in Prince George's and Anne Arundel County for the maglev, which I also support, just to go through the fundamental elements of it. Number one, it's electric, which is good for the environment. Number two, it's almost silent because it's literally gliding over its rail rather than touching it. Number three, labor unions are already supportive of it. Number four, the NAACP of the state of Maryland supports it. Number five, and this is the most significant thing, it's going to be built with private money. Public taxpayer money will only slightly be involved in the environmental impact phase of it. But for the most part, this is not something that's going to cost the transportation budget a penny. And I'm a very strong supporter of it and an opponent to the bills that would derail it. Oysters in the Chesapeake Bay, I'm going to let Jim take that more, but I will say that we wrote a law that essentially redoes the way the oyster fishery is managed. And because of COVID and because of some accusations that the administration wasn't really that excited about this new method, it's really kind of not worked out very well. And we're going to have to look into this in a little more depth. Phase out of coal. You may remember from last year that I mentioned I was introducing legislation that would phase out coal-fired power plants. Now, it didn't pass last year. Good bills rarely pass the first year, but a couple of interesting developments, partly because of the pressure that my bill brought, but for other reasons as well. Several electric-powered generators have announced the closure of several coal-fired power plants in the next 5 years in the state of Maryland, and it looks like there will only be one coal-fired power plant remaining in the state of Maryland, and that would be out in Western Maryland. So that's good news, and we'll have to keep our eyes on that. And then two other issues that are not in my committee, but they are very important to me. One is, again, I believe we ought to be investing the state's pension money much more wisely. We pay more in fees than you or I would if we invested our money in a mutual fund, in just a plain vanilla mutual fund or an index fund, and our returns would be substantially better than the really pathetic returns of the Maryland state pension system. And finally, a bill that I introduced last year, it passed the House, it ran out of time in the Senate. It's a bill having to do with gubernatorial elections. What my constitutional amendment says is that after a person wins a gubernatorial nomination for their party, they'll have 3 weeks to choose their running mate, which means they could choose one of their opponents as a running mate, similar to what happens at the federal level all the time. Unfortunately, it won't be in effect. It won't go into effect for the next gubernatorial election because it'll be on the ballot in 2022, but it'll go into effect in 2026. And I was inspired to put this in. I saw a picture of Rashern Baker and Rich Madalino at an event before the primary, and I thought, one or both of them, we're not going to see them running for office. Wouldn't it be great if one of them won and would be able to pick the other one as their running mate? Right now, it's really not a possibility. And it's my hope that with this constitutional amendment, which you, the voters, would have a chance to sign off on, hopefully we'll be able to do that. And I'll just stop there. I'm at 7:24, so I think I'm at 10 minutes here. So look forward to answering questions.
So you guys know, and I didn't do the big flowery introduction, Kumar and I have been friends since 1986 when we both worked for our former Congressman Mike Barnes, and he is as one of 6 chairs in the House, the whole House. Out of 141 people, he's one of 6 committee chairs, and does a great job and is a wonderful advocate for Rockland Gaithersburg. So with that, we have a lot of electeds, and the plan was to kind of intersperse them. I'm wondering whether we want to squeeze in. Let's do Jim Gilchrist, and then we'll hear from County Council President Tom Hucker. Is that okay, Tom? Can you stick around for? Okay. All right. County Delegate Jim Gilchrist is up next, and he'll tell you about some of his work on the same committee and with oysters and other issues. Jim.
Well, hi, everyone. It's good to see everyone online. And I know Zoom saves us a lot of travel time. And as Kumar said, it'll, in some ways it'll make this upcoming session a little more accessible. But I look forward to seeing everybody in person again. And usually I picture this as being either at Borer Park or maybe at the Gaithersburg Library. And sometimes, I think occasionally I've done it at the Rockville Library. So I look forward to seeing everybody again. I miss the Mid-County Democratic Breakfast Club once a month, which I know a lot of people get to, 3 or 4 times a year. And that's, look forward to those starting up again. And I know we heard from Congressman Trone, that was great. And I see, I just heard Senator Kagan say we'll hear from President of the Council, Tom Hucker, soon. So that's great. And thanks for Joan Kleinman to be on to represent Chris Van Hollen. Let me just talk a little bit about where we are in the Chesapeake Bay, sort of give an overview. It was back in 2010 when the EPA sort of settled on their plan to have all the Bay states by 2025 reduce the phosphorus, the nitrogen, and the sediment sufficiently to let the Bay recover. And there have been 3 phases of state plans, the watershed implementation plans. The first one was like in 2010, the second one was in 2012, and the third one was just last fall. And Maryland, according to the plan, they call them the WIPs, we should be able to get there by 2025. The phosphorus and the sediment were ahead of that. We're going to have to do some catch up on the nitrogen. But as Kumar mentioned, we've done a lot of work on oysters. That's been the focus recently. And just to review that for a second, the reason oysters have been a focus is about 10 or 15 years ago, we got down to about 25,000 bushels in 1 year. And that was all the Chesapeake Bay was able to provide during that season. Some of the earliest years, there were literally 5 or 6 million bushels a year coming out of the Chesapeake Bay of oysters. And, you look at the Bay and you expect oysters, rockfish or striped bass, and blue crabs to really be heavy indicators of how well the bay is doing, along with bay grasses, the dead zones. So we want to make progress on all those areas. And it's that WIP plan, the watershed implementation plan, and EPA's requirements that the states get it done that's really propelling it. Last year, a number of the attorney generals, including our own Brian Frosch in Maryland, sued the EPA. Also the Delaware Attorney General, the DC Attorney General, Virginia. They said, EPA, you really need to actually step up your enforcement of this because some of the states are behind. So that's going on. Separately, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation sued the EPA. And as we all know, Donald Trump's administration wanted to cut the EPA office from about 85 million annually to 8 million. And fortunately, that never happened. And that office, I expect, will be supported strongly in a Biden-Harris administration. So let me stop there and pass it back to Senator Kagan. And but it is good to see everybody, and I hope you all are having a good new year.
Thank you, Delegate Gilchrist. So as promised, we are, as I think the insider activist types who are on this probably know, Sidney Katz, District 3's council member, was the council president for the past year. And in December, he was succeeded by Tom Hucker, who represents District 5 and does a great job for Tacoma Park, Silver Spring area, but he also does a great job countywide and is off to a great start in a very boring, inconsequential kind of time. So he's going to mostly just take time off and just chill. Right, council member? Why don't you give us a few minutes on what you see going on in the council currently and in the months to come?
Yeah, that's what they told me, Cheryl. Is that not the plan?
Totally that.
Yeah, should be a nice, quiet 12 months. All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me to the mighty District 17 Town Hall. I am really glad to be with you tonight. You're right, Senator Kagan, it's been an interesting month already. I really want to thank the immediate past president of the council, Sidney Katz, who does a fantastic job of representing, I'm sure, most of you. Nobody could have prepared us for what we all went through the last year. And Sidney was elected council president right at the beginning of that. And then shortly after he was elected, the coronavirus pandemic was launched and the attendant recession. So, somehow Sidney steered us through the last 10 months without a manual, without any preparation being done. And we've gotten through it. And I think if you look around the state, and this is true, I think around the country, but Montgomery County's response to it has been stronger than almost anywhere. We've put more money on the street. We've passed 30 different special appropriations for about $255 million that we've gotten out on the street for emergency food assistance and rental relief and mental health and support for our arts facilities and other nonprofits to keep them afloat. And it was all under Sidney's leadership. So, a lot of people would have really screwed this up, but Sidney did a great job of leading us all through this past year. And then because he was, I think, eager to hand off the gavel, he handed it over to me about a month ago. And it's been quite a challenge. I have spent a lot of time looking at the budget, which we get from the county executive in March, and then we pass by May. And because of what I was just talking about, our fiscal situation is under great strain, partly because we've paid a lot of hazard pay to all our workers who are on the front lines, putting themselves at risk, exposing themselves to COVID, like firefighters who are driving COVID patients to the hospital. Partly because there's so much need out there, and partly because our revenues are down. So because we're in the worst health crisis since the Spanish flu and the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression at the same time, which is really hard to believe. Our revenues are down about $100 million. Because so many stores are closed, obviously, and many people are out of work, and our expenditures are up almost $200 million over what we budgeted just 7 months ago or so. So we're down about $300 million, and we're only halfway through this fiscal year, and it's going to be a real challenge to balance the budget this coming year without a lot of layoffs and furloughs and other things that we really don't want to see, especially because there's so much need out there. Now, we were really counting on a lot of help from the federal government. Again, we got a good infusion back in March. We spent a lot of this year spending it and getting it out there and accounting for it. And every time I called the governor's office to find out when we were going to get help from him, I was told, oh, don't worry, we're going to get more help from Santa Claus in Washington, D.C. real soon. Then we found out, of course, while the House had passed the HEROES Act months and months ago, and it was stuck in the Senate, Mitch McConnell said, I'll only allow this to pass if we take out aid to local governments. So it's good that they passed a bipartisan package. It's good that it has money for unemployment insurance. It's good that it has money for Metro, which is totally failing. It's a real problem that it doesn't have any money for your local governments who are close to the people and facing, just unprecedented need. So this morning, I pulled together about 3 weeks ago, I pulled together some elected officials and small business owners that are hurting and nonprofits and others, and launched a call to the governor about 3 weeks ago to open the rainy day fund to provide the relief that we really need. Now, the rainy day fund is what prudent legislators, like all your District 17 legislators, have been setting aside for years exactly for a time like this. And there's almost $1 billion sitting in the Treasury in the rainy day fund. And on top of that, there's $585 million in surplus in this year's budget that lawmakers weren't planning on, but they got a lot of help from the federal government. So to me, and most of us, that ought to be out on the street, helping keep businesses open, helping keep people fed and people housed. We have 240,000 households that are facing eviction. We have 20,000 to 30,000 businesses that have closed, and 1 out of 4 say they will close within the next few months. And we have 100,000 people in Montgomery County without a reliable source of food, supply of food. As crazy as that sounds, in the richest state, in the richest country in the history of the world. So I don't know why the governor's sitting on $1.5 billion. We called for him to release some of that 2 weeks ago. We had another little rally today, and Senator Van Hollen came out and a number of others. We had representatives from every county in the whole state, from Garrett County in the mountains to folks on the Eastern Shore and out to Ocean City. We had representatives there holding up their signs and calling on the governor to do this. And I got to tell you, it went really well. And 20 minutes after we ended it, the governor announced that he's going to announce an economic relief package tomorrow at 11 a.m. for families and small businesses. So I've been in touch with his staff, trying to find out more details, but I'm excited that he seems to have been listening and is interested in rolling out some kind of package tomorrow. Although I don't have a lot of details, I'll have a lot more before they roll theirs out tomorrow. We've, I don't know if under, Sydney was also not just the president of the council last year, but the public safety chair. He still is. And we've done a lot on to respond to the call for racial justice that we saw throughout the country after George Floyd's murder in the summer. We passed a couple pieces of legislation to update our police use of force and to have independent investigations of police-involved shootings. And we're still working on that topic. And I'm sure Sydney can elaborate on all that. And so many of our police calls and many of our police-involved shootings are for mental illness issues. And cops, really, most of them didn't sign up to be cops to deal with mental illness issues. They don't have the training that we really need. We need trained social workers out there. And other jurisdictions really have been ahead of us in this area. So I was able to sponsor a special appropriation in the summer that all my colleagues got behind to hire about 6 social workers and pair them up probably with EMTs and have them located around the county so that they could get very quickly to emergent crises for some of our residents, especially homeless residents and others that are in crisis, so that we have a trained social worker and an EMT and a sort of humane, informed social service response and not just an armed police officer as an option to be sent to those kind of situations. We also, what else was I going to tell you? Kumar talked about the I-495 and 270 expansion. It's been a horrible rollout from the state. It's incredibly unpopular down where I live in Silver Spring. About 1,000 people turned out for a couple events we organized last year. And I am glad that the new secretary seems to be moving forward only with a plan of improving the American Legion Bridge, which has been overdue for improvements for a long time, improving 270 up to 370. And we've been pushing, as Kumar said, to do it only within the right of way and using reversible lanes. So we're not expanding the footprint, we're more efficiently using the footprint that we have right now. And I'm going to continue to work with Sydney and all of you to make sure that that's what we get. The key stakeholder here, decision maker, is Peter Franchot, since it has to go to the Board of Public Works. Nancy Kopp, the treasurer, is on our side. The governor's not on our side, and Peter is really the swing vote. And because of all the feedback we've given to Peter, he has said now multiple times he's not going to allow anything to go forward that Montgomery County doesn't sign off on. So we need to keep, that's great to hear, and we need to keep the visibility on this issue so that something doesn't squeak through that we're not happy with. So thank you all so much. I'll put my contact info in the chat, and I'm eager to help in any way. Hope you'll reach out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Council Member Tom Hucker, Council President Tom Hucker, who I think is going to help us navigate these treacherous months. So thank you for that. And speaking of navigating through crazy times, the third delegate is Julie Polakovich-Carr. She is only in her first term. She's on the Ways and Means Committee, but she is so impressing everybody with her diligence and thoughtfulness and smart legislation and all that. So Julie, make sure you unmute and then please share with us what you've got coming.
Thanks, Cheryl, and good evening, everybody. It's great to have a great gathering this evening. We're at capacity here in the Zoom room. We have 100 people and 20 some additional people watching live on YouTube. Thank you for everyone's flexibility in terms of us navigating the technology with us this evening. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you all this evening and to be one of your representatives here in District 17. This year I have another full plate in terms of legislation. I'm sponsoring 20 bills, and don't worry, Kumar, only 4 going to your committee.
How many are coming to mine? Now I'm scared.
Probably not too many either. So I'm just going to touch on a few of them, and if I'll just put a plug in up front for anyone who's interested in seeing or reading more about any of the legislation I'm sponsoring. I do have short summaries posted on my website, juliepolakovichcarr.com, and you can read more about any of these bills. But first and foremost, the big focus for me again this year has to do with the state's finances and trying to raise revenues for the state in a fair manner. You might recall my comments about this last year, and they were largely focused on trying to fund the blueprint for Maryland's future, the big education reform package that we passed this year and unfortunately got vetoed by the governor. And, thankfully that legislation passed along with some other bills, which also got vetoed, that, paid for it for the next, foreseeable future. But because of the pandemic, really we have an issue in terms of, sorry, I'm getting distracted by hosting duties, an issue in terms of the state's budget. And we are, like many other states, facing a structural deficit for the foreseeable future. Maryland is looking at about a $1 to $2 billion deficit for the next several years because of the pandemic. And to put that in perspective, overall, our budget's about $40 billion. So, $1 to $2 billion, it's surmountable. But on the other hand, if you start trying to count up, the pennies by cutting programs or jobs, you have to make a lot of cuts to raise that amount of money. And from an economic perspective, the issue is that, austerity only cuts to state budgets really just prolong a recession and, deepen the hurt, because these are good middle class jobs when you're cutting state employees and cutting their employment. So really, many economists embrace the idea of you have to raise additional revenues. And the fairest way to do that is by closing corporate tax loopholes and ensuring that, the very wealthy few are paying their fair share in taxes. So I'm sponsoring a number of bills. Some of them are reintroductions, some are new, but it's 8 bills in total that would raise about $400 million for the state. there's a wider package of legislation that other delegates and senators are also sponsoring. My bills are some of them are part of this, that collectively would raise, a decent chunk of money, more than $1 billion, depending on what you pass. You're talking $1 to $2 billion overall in a fair and progressive way. Several of these bills did make it out of the House last year because the abbreviated session, they just kind of ran out of time on the Senate. So we're hoping that this year it'll be a different scenario. The second issue I'll just briefly touch on is in regards to taxes and, excuse me, sorry. Again, Zoom duties are confusing.
I've been covering it. I'm good.
Yeah, okay, good. Is in terms of housing, clearly there is a great need this year. And in terms of housing, many people are facing evictions or foreclosures because of lost employment and income. There is a broader housing package that's going to be introduced in the House and Senate to kind of address the immediate concerns, but there are kind of thinking a little bit longer term for people who will need to find new housing. How is that going to work, and how do they, fairly get evaluated by a potential landlord when they are applying for an apartment or rental home? So I'm sponsoring a couple of bills in this regard, basically to ensure that the tenant screening reports that landlords use actually include accurate information so that an applicant can be fairly judged and isn't getting, screened out of and taken out of a process because of information that's not about them. Third, I am sponsoring a new piece of legislation that is meant to protect Marylanders from toxic chemicals that are in everyday products that we all use, whether that is like moisturizer or makeup or nail polish. Many cosmetics and personal care products that are sold in Maryland and in the United States actually include some very toxic and harmful chemicals, things like mercury and formaldehyde and parabens and others. The state of California passed legislation this year to phase out use of the dirty dozen, some of the 12 most toxic of these chemicals. That law will go into effect over the next several years. And so I'm sponsoring legislation here in Maryland to do the same thing for Maryland, because unfortunately there just are a number of these products that are sold in drugstores or through Amazon that, might be on your bathroom shelf right now. And the last piece of legislation that I will highlight has to do with mental health and suicide prevention. We know that the pandemic has taken its toll in terms of people's mental well-being, and especially for young people. There's been some really troubling statistics about, suicide among college-age students, and it's a hard issue to solve, but one small step is letting people know that there is help out there and there is people to talk to. In fact, Maryland has a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365-day-a-year hotline that you can reach through the 211 state call center. If anyone of any age ever needs to talk and feels, that they need some additional supports. So this legislation would require colleges to include that contact information on their student ID cards. In Maryland, we already require that for public schools at the middle school and high school level to include that information on student IDs. And so this would also include it on the college IDs to just keep that phone number, at people's fingertips for when they need it. But finally, I'll just put a plug in again on my website. There's more details about all these legislation and the other bills that I'm sponsoring. And additionally, if you are not yet signed up to get my email newsletters, that is a great way to keep up with what's going on with my bills and what else is happening, especially in the House during session. I send updates about once a week about major things that are going on. And with that, I will turn it back to Cheryl.
Thank you so much, Delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr. Before I go, I want our council member, District 3, who represents all of Gaithersburg and all of Rockville. They call him the council mayor, the former president of the council, our friend and wonderful partner, council member Sydney Katz. Please catch us up. After you unmute.
Thank you very, very much, Cheryl. I believe that every conversation now begins with, am I on mute, or you are on mute? I think that's been the new hello from what we're all going through. And obviously, I'm not going to repeat what was said. Tom did a wonderful job explaining the council and what we're going through. And I see he's still here, so I'll say something nice about him to his face as well. He's my good friend, and I'm very proud to say that. We have gone through such unbelievable events, things that we could not predict, and we had to figure out even how we were going to meet. We weren't set up for Zoom, and so, and of course the county council is set up through committees. Really, we do so much of our work through the 6 standing committees, and we couldn't have the standing committees because we couldn't meet in the rooms together. And then what we had to do was, once we finally figured out how to get Zoom going, and how to have the public be able to testify at a public hearing and all those important things, we then we didn't have enough capacity to have our regular meetings and our committee meetings. So everything became a committee of the whole. Tom is the beyond everything else he's doing, is the chair of Transportation and Environment. And of course, it's everything that we touched was so very, very difficult to do. But we have worked together, all of my colleagues, and that does not mean that we agree on every topic every time, and that's good. And because we have the good, honest discussions, but we disagree agreeably, and we're able to get things accomplished. And we have, and we're going to have to do even more. Tom has touched on the very, very difficult budgetary problems, and that's not going to go away. We're going to deal with them just like we did last time. Last year, we had a continuity of services budget, and hopefully we can do better than what we had last year. But until we know, we don't know. I was a small business owner, and I always realized that you don't count any money until it comes into your register. And that's what we need to do. But just to add on to a little bit more of what has already been said, I'm very proud of the fact that we work so well with Senator Kagan and all of the delegates. And those are some of the important issues. Whether it be that we need more testing in a variety of areas, Gaithersburg or Rockville or wherever we are, and throughout Montgomery County for COVID, and that becomes the overarching issue for us. But we work well together. I certainly am on the phone with the city of Gaithersburg. I see several of their officials on the call, and the mayor of Rockville, I saw her on the call. That's one of the problems with Zoom. Everybody jumps all over the place. I saw her on the call. We certainly work well with Rockville as well. We any concerns that they have and with the county and issues with the county, hopefully we can be of great assistance with them. We talk about the mental health side of it. I was part of the group that brought mental health courts to Montgomery County. And it's certainly, we need to do it all. We need to help with people who are actually dealing with people, the mental health workers. But we also have to figure out, if they're in the court system, what they're going to be doing. And we had people that were arrested time and time again, and nobody was getting the help. The corrections people will tell you that it wasn't the way that they should have been, that they weren't being assisted. And families had tough love. I mean, they had, that they had so many difficulties with them. And since we've had mental health courts, we have both a district mental health court and a circuit mental health court. People have actually graduated from it. And I go to their graduations, and it's truly remarkable. So we're working in every side. The whole idea for public safety. One of the issues that we're going to be discussing coming up is school resource officers. We've heard people from all sides with a variety of opinions on school resource officers. We're waiting to hear from the Board of Education. I mean, the school resource officers are in their buildings, and we'd like to hear what they would like before we have the further discussions on it. And they're supposed to be giving us their information, I believe, in a couple of weeks. So we'll work with them. They're our partners, and we need to hear what they would like. And then, of course, and I'm very supportive of that 270 should not be widened outside. I say the walls of 270. I'm concerned that the right of way might be beyond the walls that are there now. So I keep saying the 270 should not be widened beyond the walls of 270, and we're working to do that as well. And I thank my friend and president, Tom Hucker, for working with us as well. This is an issue that affects everyone, but of course, because it's in my district and not in his district, just like 495 is in his district and not in mine, we do work together to solve this problem. So anyhow, if there's anything else I can talk about, or you have any other questions, I'm happy to do it. But I have a feeling you didn't come here this evening to hear from me. I just call me way out there. Thanks.
Well, Councilmember Sidney Katz, thank you for all that you do to represent us and partner with us. And I just want to give a quick example. Sidney and I worked together along with Delegate Polakovich-Carr to make sure that there was COVID testing in Gaithersburg. There was so much focus on testing sites in Silver Spring and Down County, and we kept arguing, kept talking to Dr. Gales, and we finally got a site that started at Lake Forest Mall, and in addition to some at Gaithersburg centers or faith institutions. But we have got to make sure, and Councilmember Hucker, Council President, I hope you are hearing that we need to make sure that the Up County is not forgotten, that Gaithersburg and Rockville get our share, and the need is there. So it's not just a, politically correct, it's because the demand is there, the need is there. So for this is just one example, but certainly vaccines and many other needs. So thank you. Thank you, Sidney. I'm going to introduce all the elected officials after I speak, but I am going to go now, and I am going to share screen because thanks to my fabulous staff, we have a really cool PowerPoint that will help us go through things. So hopefully you all can see that, and I'm going to go through it very quickly. Let me just say also that many people have talked about mental health on this, and the part of that is because of Congressman Raskin and other suicides. I just want to emphasize that Every Mind, which used to be called the Mental Health Association of Montgomery County, is located in Rockville. They have a toll-free 24/7, 365. There is also a 988 suicide prevention hotline that is going to be federal and will be going live. Not yet though, but if you're T-Mobile, it works now. But our own constituent and activist Richard McKeon is working on that and has been for a while. So please make sure that you or your friends or family do reach out if they need help. So with that, I'm going to run through some of what I've been working on, and we will go from there. So first off, I always introduce myself as Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. And people said, well, after the Senate adjourned, like they have this image of if we're not in Annapolis, then we're kind of not doing anything. But I assure you, we have been crazy busy. So the biggest thing that we really had to undertake was unemployment benefits. So many people who had qualified for unemployment insurance and deserved the benefits were not getting them. And the Hogan administration just had a disastrous process. They tried 3 different contractors. They still aren't working well. So I've been starting to tweet every Wednesday with a hashtag Want Action Wednesday. And that's what we use most. And the numbers are just really frustrating. I want to recognize my staff, Ryan Kirby, my chief of staff, and Abby Snyder, my legislative and communications director. They're both on this call and they have done an extraordinary job. I also have several of my interns and my legislative fellows, legacy fellows and stuff who are making a huge difference in the work that we do. So want to make sure to give them the shout out that they so richly deserve. One of the cool things that we have done for years, I have always said that I fancy myself to be the senator for the nonprofit sector. I have been trying to get the National Conference of State Legislators to have a nonprofit caucus. And it was a little bit of like good intention, but not moving. So I started one and reached out to the National Council on Nonprofits as well as the National Council of State Legislators. And we've had 2 conversations now. And I have gotten recommendations from other legislators around the country to that are especially connected to the nonprofit sector. And why would this matter for the residents of Gaithersburg and Rockville? Because I want to share best practices. There are laws that I have passed here in Maryland, and I want to learn what some legislator has done in Montana or Connecticut or New Mexico. And so I'm really excited about that. So we've launched it and we will continue to work on that. In September, I launched a podcast or vlog, Kibitzing with Kagan. I have brief chats with people I find fascinating. And Jackie DiCarlo of Manna Food Center and Courtney Hall of Interfaith Works, the new CEO, have both been among my guests, and there will be many, many others. So check out my YouTube channel and watch some of them. They're really compelling. Really, I'm so lucky to know so many interesting people. In August, we also rolled out statewide 911, text to 911. I think you probably have all heard me talk about the fact that I've had three people die in my district when 911 has failed. And so I've spent the last 6 years working on 911 issues. And the last 3 years, I have chaired the statewide Next Generation 911 Commission. We have just issued our third annual report with 22 recommendations. We've already passed 9 laws that put us at the forefront nationally among states for upgrading our 911 systems. This was a big deal. All 24 jurisdictions went live, text to 911 the same day. Always call if you can, but text if you can't, and make sure you include your location. This is really critical. Make sure you help spread the word on that. So sometimes it takes legislation and sometimes it just takes being awake and aware. So I was walking one of my staffers into a state government building and I noticed the photo to the left, which said handicap parking. And handicap is just not a word that is acceptable anymore. It's just outdated and is seen by many of us as offensive. And so I wrote a letter to the Secretary of the Department of General Services, and we got all of the signs at every state building and every parking lot changed to the symbol on the right that is also not only inoffensive, but is also bigger and works for those who don't speak English well. I was very honored to be once again a legislative superstar by the Maryland Municipal League. I think there were 6 or 7 of us this year, as well as the Peacemaker of the Year from the Conflict Resolution Center from Montgomery County. That was really awesome. And even though the governor delayed it even further than we had set up in our legislation, Delegate Brooke Learman and I took 3 years, but we became the first state in the nation to pass a statewide styrofoam ban. And so we are #foam-free ND. And while Maryland had done it and Gaithersburg had done it on the cutting edge, and then Rockville and Annapolis and Baltimore and Prince George's County, it was still a patchwork. And so now it is statewide and it is in effect. So wherever you go, if you take carry out, you should not be giving your food in a styrofoam container, which is a big deal for the environment and for public health. That is the 911 Commission. That's the front page of that report. It is easily found on my website as well as those from the past 2 years. You can go to cherylkagan.org and find it there. Obviously, COVID testing and vaccine has taken all of our time and attention when we're not focused on unemployment insurance and legislative matters and other casework and all that. I had a nice victory this week, because people were focused on health care employees and frontline employees and first responders, but they were talking about police, fire, and paramedics. And so I wrote a letter to the Secretary of the Department of Health, and we got the first responders, our 911 specialists, the women and men under the headsets, and they are now going to be in the very first tier to make sure that they stay safe. Because if our 911 specialists are COVID positive and the 911 center has to close down, we can have the best police, fire, and paramedics, and no one will be there to answer the call and dispatch help. So we are working on that. So let's give a quick glimpse as to what I'm going to be working on this session, and it's long. Like Julie Polakovich-Carr, I have, I think, 22 or 23 bills. It's a lot. Some of them are small, some of them are significant, and I'm going to run through them very fast. First, this is what the Senate chamber normally looks like, and this is what it's going to look like when we take our oath and start off on Wednesday at noon. There is a lot of plexiglass. There are increased distances between the desks, and in committee room, it's very much the same. I will once again continue as vice chair of the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs. I mentioned that Kumar Barve is chair of the of his committee, Environment and Transportation. They're only one of 6, and in the Senate, there are only 4 committees. So there are only 4 chairs and 4 vice chairs in our 47-member body. So I'm really honored to work with Chairman Paul Pinsky as his vice chair on all of these issues. One of the key issues that came out of our committee last year was the Kirwan Commission, the blueprint for Maryland's future. It set a 10-year plan for our public schools, and really disappointingly, Governor Hogan vetoed it. We will be coming back addressing that. That will be a top priority. We are going to be working on climate change, on recycling, clean energy, and many other environmental issues. And I have 2 environmental issues. Black Lives Matter, the police reform, and many other civil rights and civil liberties issue will be top on our agenda. And my own bills, I will obviously be bringing 911 issues. It looks like I'll have 4 issues related to 911. Election reform, I've got 3 bills, one of them in partnership with the Maryland Association of Counties. It's one of their 4 top priority issues, working very closely with them. So I'm happy to explain a little bit more, but I'm going to go through and save time for questions. I've got a couple of bills for the nonprofit sector as I continue to work to support them. I'm hoping this year is finally the year we are going to repeal the offensive Confederate era themed Maryland state song. It refers to Abraham Lincoln as a tyrant and a despot. Jenny Forehand, my predecessor, used to work on this. I used to think it was silly. This will be the 3rd year that I will have brought this back. And we are, I think, going to just repeal, not repeal and replace. I think it's just time to bid adieu. And the new Senate president and the new speaker have both expressed their support for this. I've got some consumer protection legislation, including making sure that a spare tire, either a full size or a donut, is in every rental car, so you don't end up at 2 in the morning in the middle of nowhere and discover that there's no rental car. Additional transparency. I've been working with Montgomery County Delegate Mark Corman. We've passed several years of transparency bills, and this year we're doing another one even bigger. And I also have 2 ethics bills. Telehealth. I passed an emergency law on telehealth. It was one of the few laws that Governor Hogan actually signed, didn't just let become law without his signature, but it was an emergency bill and went into effect right away. There's still some problems, and we have to make sure that kids can get access to telehealth while the school-based health centers are closed. We have to make sure that that in hospitals and clinics, that our bathrooms, that we don't wash our hands and then need to actually use a door handle and maybe transmit COVID that way. So we are looking for a mandate to make sure that we don't spread at healthcare institutions. Obviously, 270 and 495, I've talked to the Senate president about this. We need to figure out solutions. And one of the key questions is, what is traffic going to look like after COVID and everyone's back to work? So there are many, many other issues, but I want to make sure that I have time. We all have time for questions. I am everywhere. So please, if you haven't liked my Senator Cheryl Kagan Facebook page, also give a like to the District 17 Democratic Club, which has its own page, and we can stay in touch that way. I'm very active on Twitter at Cheryl Kagan. I do 1 photo a day on my Instagram page. Then again, if you would consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, you can always email me, and information on scholarships, COVID, vaccines, and much more are on my website. Like Delegate Balakovich-Carr, I do a weekly blast email. Please make sure that you sign up for that. If you're not getting it, you can learn more about that. And with that, I want to stop share. And I want to recognize the elected officials that are with us, and then we will take questions. So thank you very much again, for being here and for your attention. And I'm just going to check my notes here. Okay, I hope that I have gotten this list, but let me just, so from US Senator Chris Van Hollen, we have Joan Kleinman that you've already heard from. Congressman David Trone has already spoken to us, and Andrew Donlin, his hardworking district person, is with us as well. Sydney Katz, our council member Tom Hucker, you've already heard from all of them. From the city of Rockville, Bridget Donnell Newton, the mayor, and council members Beryl Feinberg and Monique Ashton are here. From the city of Gaithersburg, we have council members Mike Sesma, Ryan Spiegel, Neil Harris, Rob Wu, and we have former council members Yvette Monroe and Dolly Kildee. And I also want to give a shout out to Dennis Enslinger and Tom Lonergan for taking the time, senior staff that just do a tremendous job. So thank you for taking the time. I also want to recognize Ellie Shaw-Bilbidia, the District 17 Democratic crusader and leader on so many things. We also have Central Committee members, Jennifer Hosey and Matthew Lee, and I want to recognize Stephen Fisher, who served for many years on the Democratic Central Committee, did a great job, and the Rockville Chamber Director, Margie Graff. Thank you for joining, and I hope I haven't left out too many others, but with that, I think let's take questions. So let's see. I'm going to toss it to you, Delegate Polakovich-Carr, to see what question. Why don't you toss one question out that might have come in on YouTube?
So we actually had a couple of questions from both Jill and Dolly about the Time to Care Act, which is paid family leave. That's been legislation that's been sponsored several years now in Maryland, but hasn't made it across the finish line. And basically the questions were about trying to get an update about what the plans are, if we know, for that legislation for the upcoming session, and whether or not we all are supporting that legislation.
Kumar, you want to lead off real quickly?
Yep. I don't know what the details are. Unfortunately, I'm a bit siloed in my environment, transportation, ethics, housing bubble, so forgive me. But I've always been very supportive of legislation to raise people and raise opportunities for people to be able to support themselves. So I'd be supportive.
Jim?
Yo, Jim.
Okay, we don't have Jim. Julie, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, no, I support it too. Did that not,
No,
was I muted there?
you were.
Yeah, I'm also supportive. I don't know the details in terms of what's happening. I believe a bill is being reintroduced, but I don't actually have any details on that. But Dolly, if you send me an email, I can try to find out more for you.
Ditto. So that's, yeah, I would like to read the bill, but I obviously support the concept and hope to support the bill when it comes. Another question from YouTube?
Yeah, actually, I think Susan Lyon has raised her hand, and she confirmed we're going to let her go ahead and unmute herself and ask her own question.
You are still muted. There we go.
Okay, sorry. Hang on, let me get it. I tried to write it up. I'm concerned that like tens of thousands of Marylanders are being harassed by hospitals for medical debt. And often these amounts are about $1,000 or less. This makes, I know there's funding to cover these amounts that impoverished people can't pay, but the state is not paying that. So instead, hospitals are doing predatory practices, like putting liens on cars and houses and garnishing wages and spending a lot of money dragging poor people to a small claims court. And there's a bill called the Medical Debt Protection Act, which would prevent hospitals from harassing our residents who are now living paycheck to paycheck. And I was wondering if that's something that you could get up and support. There's a lot of support from like the National Nurses Union and the Healthcare Workers Union and other groups. So I was hoping that we could get under that as well.
Yeah, I think, I spent the beginning years of my career working on reforming HMO regulation and allowing people to see the physician of their choice. And so this would be very much right up the alley of my career back when I first started out. So I'd be very supportive of that kind of consumer protection. Let me just say one thing, though. Because of this COVID year, we are substantially limiting on the House side how many co-sponsors can be on bills. And so, for example, except, with bills that were pre-filed, that is filed early, a lot of them had multiple sponsors. But my anticipation is going to be, there's not going to be an opportunity to sponsor, for people to add their names as co-sponsors. And the reason for that is that the staff of the Department of Legislative Services is so overworked that we would rather have them spending their time crafting amendments and the legislation of bills and spend less time adding Kumar Barve's name onto 50 bills, which it is time consuming. And this year, time is at a premium. So if somebody who you respect isn't a co-sponsor of the bill, it's because this year those rules have been changed.
So you cannot co-sponsor?
Correct.
So apparently one of the ways, Susan, one of the ways that that COVID is apparently more easily than not transmitted is on paper, which is why if you go to a restaurant, you're eating outside and freezing your little tushes off a little bit. That's why more and more you have to they won't give you a paper menu, or if they do, they throw it away afterwards, recycle it afterwards. But you have to use your QR code. So walking around with paper and asking people for their signature is something that both the House and Senate are trying to avoid.
Yeah, and my feeling has always been that you show your support by voting for a bill. And
all right, well, that's what I mean. Would you vote? Not so much co-sponsor, but would you vote for this?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't care about paper and pencil. Would you?
Got it.
Get up under it and support it?
Right.
Yeah.
Because right now Maryland has like a grade D on, which is unusual for us on great things. And we don't usually harass or go out of our way to harass the impoverished.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd vote for it.
Yeah. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for the question.
Okay.
Councilmember Feinberg, you had a question. It's in the chat, but why don't you just briefly ask it or read it aloud? And then we've got some others who have raised their hands or messaged us.
Thank you very much, Senator Kagan. Yes, what I was asking is the D17 delegation supporting the release of rainy day funds as Council President Hucker described early on in this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, I do. And let me just say, oh, go ahead, Cheryl.
Yeah, so if this isn't a rainy day, a thunderstorm day, a hurricane day, I don't know what else is. So I'm all in. We have got to protect the jobs, the small businesses, the nonprofits, and the residents who are really struggling through tough times. And Margie Graff, the Rockville Chamber, Marilyn Balcom, the Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber and the County Chamber have done a great job of trying to provide support for their members and others, but they are going to need some government support. So thank you, Council Member. Kumar, go ahead, sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, I was just going to say that in ordinary times, we've been very reluctant to dip into the rainy day fund because that parcel of money there is what allows us to maintain our AAA bond rating. And with that, we are charged a much lower rate of interest for our bonded indebtedness. This is an unusual circumstance, though, and I think Maryland has a reputation for being very fiscally well managed. And if we take a temporary hit to our AAA bond rating, it's something we'll be able to overcome pretty quickly. I think that this is an instance where use of the rainy day fund for a rainy day is warranted, whereas previously we really saw it as an opportunity to protect our AAA bond rating primarily.
Totally agree.
Okay. Anyone else want to speak to that? Because I want to watch the time, and apparently we have 10 questions in the queue. So
go to the next question.
You want to toss the next question?
Yes. So a question from Patricia, who's watching on YouTube, who's asking about basically the outrageous conduct of Delegate Dan Cox, who participated in and funded buses for people who went to the attack on the Capitol this week. She'd like to see him censured and removed from his seat. And basically, would like to know where we are on that front and if there might be any action from the General Assembly.
Yeah, let me start with this. First of all, censure and expulsion are remedies that are arrived at for the actions you take in the General Assembly. It's typically not for what you do outside. So the most important thing will be for, before we censure or reprimand any member of our body, we have a very thorough ethics investigation vetting process. We do not do anything by knee jerk. We don't do anything quickly. We want to be able to investigate every aspect of the problem. Now, if he's found to have violated the law, then that will be a very serious thing. And we're going to look into that. I'm not going to prejudge this. And the reason I'm not going to prejudge it is, first of all, I like to not make decisions about major issues such as these until all sides have been heard out. And that's what our ethics process in the House of Delegates is actually very robust. We've reprimanded, unfortunately, we've had to reprimand quite a number of people in the last several years, but we've only done it after a very lengthy due process. And I completely support that.
Thank you, Delegate Barbe. Delegate Palakovich-Carr, why don't you give us one of the other questions here?
Yes. Let's see. Rachel was asking about the Maryland Environmental Rights Amendment and whether or not we would support this. I guess Senator Patterson and Delegate Fisher, Barron, and Stewart are sponsoring the House version. It's to address gaps in Maryland's environmental laws by recognizing the fundamental right of all Marylanders to a healthy environment and stable climate. I think this is the reintroduction of a bill, and I think I co-sponsored it last year, if it's the bill I'm thinking of. I don't know if my colleagues want to weigh in on that one.
So it sounds like the environmental justice bill that I think is going to be coming through this year, but we didn't have a hearing on it. I look forward to learning about it.
Yeah, let me say that the problem with this bill in my committee has been that the members of my committee, who are among the most progressive environmentalists, in the nation, remember, we're the ones who banned fracking in the state of Maryland. I think we're the first legislature to ban fracking that actually had frack gas under our land. We do this via the legislature. We make balanced decisions with respect to the environment and with respect to the economy of our state. And so let me give you a very good example of this. We passed a law to ban neonicotinoid pesticides, but we allowed farmers to apply them if they were trained to do so. If we had a constitutional amendment, I think we wouldn't be able to craft a compromise like that. And that's why that bill has had trouble in my committee, and I've never supported it in the past.
So Kumar, just so you know, and everybody knows, I actually have a neonicotinoid bill to tighten up access to it. But again, we have a lot of other issues to discuss and other questions. And we have just a few minutes left. Julie?
Yeah, I think Mayor Newton had a question about I-270.
Sure. Thank you all so much. And really my thanks to D17 for showing us how this can be done. This is an awesome opportunity. And so we appreciate it very much. I want to go back to the comments that were made earlier. I think President Hucker and Councilman Katz about I-270 and the real concern that we in the city of Rockville have about where the line of demarcation could be, whether it's the right of way or the sound wall. As you all know, because you live here, we've got homes that are inches, that's an exaggeration, sorry, feet from the current sound wall. And it's really, really a different situation here and in our sister city, Gaithersburg. So we just want to work with you. We want to be on the conversations. We want to be helpful in any way that we can. I wanted to just make sure we get that out there. And one more thing that hasn't been addressed tonight, but with the disaster, horrible event that happened on Wednesday at the Capitol, another Capitol police officer has died today, this time by suicide. Mental health is real. Our public servants are put in such an uncompromising position sometimes, and we need to really understand what a challenge and a disaster this was for them. And I don't bring that up to be maudlin or anything. I bring it up because it is real. What happened Wednesday was not just an abomination to our country. It put our public, our first responders in a terrible position because of the failure of leadership. So thank you for all you're doing. I'll end with that. Thank you for everything you're doing.
And let me compliment you, Mayor, for having worked with our new MDOT Secretary, Greg Slater. I appreciate you for spending the time to do that.
Actually,
Thank
before you go, Madam Mayor, I just want to mention that, well, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't do this here, but the mayors and council members and senior staff of both Gaithersburg and Rockville are working very closely with us as we figure out capital bond projects that will create jobs and improve some of the institutions in our communities. So more on that will be coming out soon.
We have great representation. Thanks to you all.
Thank you. I think we just have time for probably one or two quick wrap-up questions, or we can go to final comments from anyone from the four of us.
I actually remembered something I neglected to mention.
All right, so let's each do 1 minute. And
Okay,
we'll wrap up.
this will be very quick. Maryland gets about $400 million in assistance for renters from the federal stimulus, and I'm going to push to have all of it, not part of it, all of it given directly to rental assistance, because there are hundreds of thousands of people who are literally wondering where they're going to live in the next couple of months. I hope all of it goes to rental assistance. Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Super important. Delegate Gilchrist, wrap up comments, 1 minute.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks for being here. I just put in the chat my cell number, so call or text. I liberally turn off the sound at night, so don't worry about bothering me in the middle of the night. But thank you all for being here, and reach out to me at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Julie?
Yeah, so maybe just a few quick public service announcements, and I'm going to share my screen real quickly on just a few of these, just some resources that may be of interest and helpful to people. One, I know we did have a few questions about vaccinations, and I just want to quickly address that you can track daily updates in terms of how many people have been vaccinated in Maryland at coronavirus.maryland.gov. They actually show you right now we're at 2.25% of the population has received their first dose of the vaccination. And I know there have been concerns about the slow rollout of that, but it has been great to see those numbers, ticking up, more and more each day. Second, if you want to get updates from the county about when your group may be called to get vaccinated, there actually is a new feature as of a few days ago on the county website where you can sign up to get either email or text notifications on that. And that's going to be a great resource. And finally, for people who are interested in testifying in Annapolis this year, that will be a possibility, even though the bill hearings will be virtual. And basically you go to the General Assembly website and then you click on this My MGA button here on the right-hand side. You have to register through the General Assembly website, but it will allow you to sign up to testify virtually at any bill hearings this session. And finally, if anyone is still struggling with unemployment benefits, please reach out to any of our offices or all of us. We are coordinating to help people, get the unemployment benefits that they should be receiving. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you. And before I wrap us up, I just want to acknowledge Delegate Polakovich-Carr and her staff, but especially her, for helping to launch this and create the logo and help push it out. And you guys heard about it because of our social media and our blast emails and all that. So we really try to reach you all. So thank you for being reached. And thank you, Delegate Polakovich-Carr, for helping coordinate all this. I want to, again, like them, thank all of you all. This is all about partnership, especially in these tough times. It's the four of us. It's Kumar, Jim, Julie, and me, but it's also the mayors and council and senior staff of Rockville and Gaithersburg. It's the nonprofit sector, it's the business community, and its constituents. There's someone here on this Zoom, and I'm not going to say her name, but there's someone who came to me with an issue that she thought was unreasonable, and I ended up sponsoring legislation. Delegate Blockridge Carr did one that way on homeowners insurance that I'm working with her this year. My election bills. There are a lot of things that we learn from you. So you don't have to be a political expert or a legislative expert, but if you've got an issue that you think government should be taking action on, please reach out to us. I was able to pass that bill. It was a good consumer protection bill, and others in her situation will not have to struggle the way she did. And so that was thanks to her efforts to notify me. I want to speak briefly. The Senate and the House are going to work differently this year. So normally I welcome visitors. I love it when people come down to Annapolis, but it's going to be really hard to do that. So we are allowed to have in-person meetings, but under very restrictive conditions. I can only have 2 people in my office. So the 30 people from the Sierra Club, that kind of thing is not happening. So 2 people, I have to get them at the front door. I have to walk them in my office, have the meeting with them, and then escort them back out of the building. We are going to be on the Senate floor just for roughly 2 hours at a time, and maybe only 2 or 3 times a week. So that's going to be tough. And Kumar talked about the hearings in the House. Ours will mostly also be virtual. We are restricting the number of witnesses, and there is a 4-2-4, which I love because it's the Rockville telephone exchange, but 4 proponents, 4 opponents, 2 that are favorable with amendments. If you want to testify on a bill, get your testimony in early or contact the sponsor early, because we get to pick, on the Senate side anyway, we get to pick 3 of the 4 proponents. And so if you've got really powerful testimony or an anecdote that you want to share, get in touch with us more than 72 hours in advance, because that's our deadline. 72 hours in advance is when we have to pick our 3 people. The 4th proponent is chosen basically by lottery. So that's the way it's going to work in the Senate. And with that, please sign up for our newsletters. Please check us out on social media. And if you haven't watched any of my Kibitzing with Kagan videos, I did talk to the CEO of Every Mind about suicide, about mental health. I talked about housing and evictions with the Renters Alliance of Montgomery County, the technology, the CEO of the Maryland Technology Council. It's really been a fun journey. And last week's was with the Maryland Senate President, so you can get a glimpse on that. So check out my YouTube channel and take a look at those. And with that, I just really want to thank all of the elected officials, all of the community leaders, the party leaders, and we are grateful for your time, for your support, and for your questions. You help us do our job better. So please stay safe, stay masked, stay healthy, stay mentally and physically healthy. Check in on loved ones, and we will look forward to seeing you in person at some point before too long. Take care, y'all.
Thanks, everybody.